So hello everybody. Today is part 2 of Career Day, and we have lined up 20 speakers, and this is today's list. And you can ask questions or whatever the speaker wants. They like it interactive, so ask stuff. Today we have Dr. HallPorter, who's from UT, and she'll tell you all about her life, her career path, her dreams, etc. Okay? So talk, don't be scared, little 17-year-olds. You have your phones now away, and then at 30-minute point, you get to go on your phones for 2 more minutes and check that you didn't miss anything. Okay? All right. Thank you, Dr. HallPorter, for coming.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, scholars. How are we doing?
Good morning.
Thank you. I love that. Do you know, sometimes when I walk into a collegiate classroom, I'll say, good morning, scholars, and people just sit there like I haven't said a word. I'm like, who raised you? So, thank you all for replying to my good morning. If you Google Marcia Fudge, she's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, I think. She had an incident that was very similar in the White House press room. And she said, good morning, and the press people were looking at her like, huh? And she was like, I said good morning. I was like, I love that. Anyway, thank you for being here. My name is Dr. HallPorter. I am Faculty Development Coordinator in the Texas Institute for Discovery, Education, and Science. And I'm also an Associate Professor of Biology in the Biology Instructional Office. So what does all that mean? All right? How many of you know what it takes to be a teacher? I have a few people in the room. So a lot of people on this side know what it takes to be a teacher. Few people on this side have a fair idea of what it takes to become a teacher. Well, it takes lots of training. It takes some certifications and demonstration of certain competencies, okay? Would you say that a college professor is a teacher?
Yes.
Yes. Why are they a teacher? Because they teach, right? But an interesting thing, about being a high school teacher or a middle school teacher or elementary school teacher versus being a college teacher, 9 chances out of 10, the college teachers that you will be sitting in front of, just like I'm standing in front of you, are not trained to teach. And that's where I come in, okay? My career path, so I'm a PhD in molecular and cellular pathobiology, so all that's just a fancy way to say that I literally study the molecular and cellular pathogenesis or progression of pathology of disease processes, okay? And the disease that I specifically know a lot about is cardiovascular disease, okay, which takes into account the functioning of the cardiovascular system, okay? And so that's kind of what I study. Cardiovascular disease meaning like, anybody know what atherosclerosis is? What's atherosclerosis? Yeah, the buildup of plaque in the arteries, yes, and it's basically called hardening of the arteries. In fact, atherosclerosis, if you take an artery and you open it up, like it's a pipe, but if you cut it and open it up and open it out, it looks a lot like cheese pizza. So the next time you down a large cheese pizza from Domino's, just know by the time you're 40 years old, you're gonna have some cheese pizza literally sitting in your blood vessels, all right? So just a plug for healthy habits. Don't eat a whole cheese pizza. All things in moderation, right? Okay. So anyway, I literally coach and teach professors in the methods and the ways of teaching. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I got there to be able to do that. It includes some very significant milestones. So I have all these icons on this slide, right? And if I had to describe myself to you, who is Monica HallPorter? Who is that girl? Or who's that woman, excuse me? I would say, at the heart, I'm a little girl from Wood County, Texas, so Hawkins is the town, who believed that she could. So I went from a town of 1,309. I was one of 55 graduating seniors from Hawkins High School in 1996. I was ranked number 3 in my class, okay? To now, working with faculty at a major Research One university that is the flagship academic institution of Texas, okay? 794 faculty that I serve, that I work with, over 14,000 students in the College of Natural Sciences. So how could a little girl from East Bumbledoody do that, All right? All these icons represent steps along the way. So I want you to take about 10 seconds and think, do you have a question about any one of these icons? If so, raise your hand, I'll call on you, and you tell me your question. Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Hi, Piper. How are you? I'm good. Thanks for coming today. What's your question? Which one did I go to first? For what? For university? First in my life. Okay, so I guess I'll start with Hampton University. That blue and white, let me see, does this part work? It's that blue and white circle there. This is Hampton University, 1868. Okay, so that's where I went to undergrad, right? And I love that place. Y'all, it's on the water. It's on the banks of a river. And you can sit out on the waterfront and study and do your work. It's awesome. So I got a degree in biology with an emphasis in molecular biology from Hampton, right? And one of the things I love about Hampton is it promotes actually going out to serve, right? In fact, my school song, how many of you all know the Lake Travis High School school song? Do you have one?
There is one. It's on the wall.
There's one. It's probably on the wall somewhere. But the alma mater for my school says, "O Hampton, a thought sent from heaven above, to be a great soul's inspiration. We sing thee the earnest of broad human love, the shrine of our heart's adoration." So we love Hampton, right? And then it goes on to say, "O Hampton, we never can make thee a song except as our hearts do the singing, in service that will thy great spirit prolong and send them through centuries ringing. So let your lives do the singing," right? So that means that I'm supposed to be here doing things like this, letting my life do the singing of what I learned at Hampton. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Yes? Okay, so that is the Molecular Cardiology Research Institution. That's at Tufts University. Okay? And it's on the Tufts University Medical School campus, downtown Boston, right? So what did I do with the Molecular Cardiology Research Institution? After I finished my PhD at Wake Forest, I actually did what's called a postdoctoral fellowship. So basically, at that time, I had all the degrees I was ever going to get, but I still wasn't ready to start my career. It's kind of like that when you choose any type of graduate and professional education. After the degree, there's still some training. And so I did a lot of research there on cardiovascular disease, but at the same time, I also learned how to teach. So a lot of times, like the people that teach you now go to undergrad and get a degree in education. I got a degree in biology, a PhD in molecular biology, and then went on to learn how to teach afterward, like as an add-on to my career. So that's why I learned how to do the things that I do in the classroom, and also the things that I did at the laboratory research bench. All right, anyone else have a question about one of my little logos there? Yes, go ahead. Okay, good. So I will say this, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. My focus there was literally research in cardiovascular disease and looking at the effects of estrogen on heart failure, all right? So heart failure is that point where the heart says, "Ooh, I'm tired. I need to sit down somewhere, take a little rest," right? Because over time, what happens when you have a significant buildup of plaque in your arteries, and then also other cardiovascular pathological disease processes, is the heart basically enlarges because it's been working so hard to pump blood. Literally, your heart has to pump really hard because blood actually goes from the left. Anybody know anything about the heart? It's got 4 chambers, right? Two ventricles on the bottom, basically. 2 atria up top. So when your heart beats, right, it's actually going to pump blood from this big chamber called the left ventricle, right? And it's going to send it up through a vessel, the major transporter called the aorta, that's kind of on the top, and it kind of curves off your heart like this, and then hooks down, and it goes all the way down to about here, where it splits and bifurcates, all right, and turns into some major arteries going down this way into your legs. And then there are also some major arteries that go up this way, like the carotid arteries toward your neck. Yeah, okay. And so literally, The left ventricle gets big because it has to work against the pressure that's created in the vessels, right? To get blood to go all over your body. So when your heart beats, it literally is sending blood all over your body to what we call the systemic circuit, right? And so heart failure is basically at that point where the heart has gotten enlarged and it literally is not pumping efficiently anymore. And it can't regain that function because heart muscle cells don't regenerate. Okay? So I studied what impact estrogen has, or I studied what impact estrogen has on heart failure. Okay? All right. One more, if anything. Anybody? No? Okay. So this is what I encourage you to do. A lot of you all are thinking about your careers, and you're thinking about what you want to be when you grow up, right? Anybody, what do you want to do when you grow up?
I have no idea.
Okay. What are you passionate about? What do you like?
Maybe helping other people.
Okay. All right. So in helping other people, what problems do you want to solve?
Their problems?
You want to solve all of them?
No, not all of them.
Okay.
Like companies that need help in like a certain area.
What area?
Like a therapist or like
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. All right. So you have a passion. Okay. So you want to help people solve their personal problems or issues, like through therapy. Yeah? Do you know that you can do that in a lot of different ways? You can do that in a lot of different ways. So what I want you all to consider as you think about how your career trajectory or how your life trajectory shapes up is why you want to be doing something, right? Why you want to be doing something. Because the what to your why can look like so many different things. But if you know what you want to do or why you want to do it, what problems you want to solve, the steps along the career journey will be more palatable. So let me give you an example, all right? As a postdoc, I spent a whole lot of time learning some very specific techniques. All right, so here's a little bit of something about my research. You see this apparatus here that's on I guess for you, the left-hand side of the slide where it says constant pressure perfusion. And then you see this little thing here, Superheat 3000, right? That's a water bath, all right? The constant flow perfusion, that's a pump. And then dangling off the end of that little syringe in the middle, or cannula, is actually a heart. It can be from a mouse or a rat, okay? I spent a whole lot of time figuring out how to get that to work well, because if anything is not ideal or optimal in that setup, you spend a whole lot of time isolating cells that 2 days later are going to die. So basically, I spent about a year, or give or take 3 months, literally learning the technique behind isolating heart muscle cells. And you see basically in figure A, it says perfused digestion. And you can see the top is a rat heart, the bottom is a mouse heart. So you take a whole heart, you run liquid through it or perfuse it to digest this extracellular matrix, and you end up with individual cells in culture. And literally in B, C, D, and E, well, those are photomicrographs of the cells. D specifically is cardiomyocytes, or heart muscle cells from mice. E is from rats. Now, long story short, it takes a pretty long time to learn how to do this and learn how to do it well. But I had a good reason for why I wanted to do it, because I had always been interested in the #1 killer of people in the United States and the Western world, cardiovascular disease. And because of some exposure to some groundbreaking research at the time in cardiovascular disease, I wanted to know, why are women protected from cardiovascular disease, right? And so I spent a whole lot of time doing minuscule, mundane things like learning how to do this, because that why was so persistent in my life, okay? Let's see, what's your favorite song?
I don't have one.
Anybody have a favorite song? Yes, what is it? Yes, okay. So what are the words? Oh, living on a prayer, take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. That song? Okay, all right, okay. All right, so you're in the car and you're singing that song, right? And you're just, kind of going through it, mouthing the words. But what made you want to sing that song and just sing it with all the gusto? It's an awesome song, but any emotions or feelings that come to that? It's about living, right? And so you're flying high, you're at the top of your class at Lake Travis High School, things are going right, and you're in your car, oh, living on prayer, right? You have a purpose behind singing that song very emotionally, right? And so if you know why you're doing something, what you're doing will always be enjoyable to you. Make sure your what is always aligned with your why. Okay, so now, that was research, but I also had a good deal of outreach and education. Okay, I worked at the Museum of Science in Boston doing what's called overnight workshops with kids. That was my first exposure to a lot of high school and elementary school teachers, and literally working with those people on random Friday nights. So I wasn't at the football game in Boston. I was at the Museum of Science, teaching little kids science workshops, learning how to handle different animals. The Museum of Science in Boston is actually pretty cool. If you ever go to Boston, you gotta go, right? It's a certified zoo, and so there's all these different animal collections. I learned how to handle like 8 different animals while I was there. Alligator, monitor lizard, boa constrictor, rabbit, hamsters, gerbils. And I would use these things in my science workshops with kids. It's a lot of fun. I also worked with a program called Science Club for Girls. By the way, most of these two, the top two that I talked about, were all volunteer things. And then I also worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the Broad Institute of Harvard and MIT, working with kids just like you between junior, senior year in high school. They actually come to MIT and do this program where they take their first semester of college courses. And one of them was my genomics class. We had a lot of fun, right? So in the photo up top, I'm depicted actually helping some of my students in a laboratory with with an inquiry-based project that they literally got a chance to do a whole lot of biochemical techniques and then present on their work at the end of an 8-week program. So it's a lot of fun. One of the highlights, the most recent highlights with outreach and education, though, is I was featured this past February by PBS and Nova. One on their website, which was an educational field trip, and that was a lot of fun. So basically, I worked with kids from all around the country, all across the country, in schools, little and small. I think the most surprising school that was there was a school from Alaska was actually tuned in. And I actually taught kids how to extract DNA from strawberries and also from their cheek cells. So that was pretty fun, all right? But then that was a part of a larger suite of programming where I was featured on this show that PBS Nova does called Beyond the Elements Life. Beyond the Elements is actually a teaching series that PBS puts on. The last Beyond the Elements was made about 10 years ago and is still being used as a teaching tool in classrooms across the country at all levels of education. So I was featured on that, the most recent Beyond the Elements, which is the life segment. And so now I actually used my research, my outreach and education to now have a career that focuses on policy and professional development through something called the Texas Mindset Initiative and also other services that are offered by the office that I work in at UT. So in addition to this Texas Mindset Initiative, I also evaluate professors. Does that sound scary or what? Anybody remember what happens when teachers are evaluated here at school? What happens? Does that happen here still?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about it.
Once a year, they come into the classroom, sit in the back. They write it up, they put it on a website for us to look at. They always try to have positive feedback for us and also things that we can work on.
Yeah.
15 different criteria.
Right. So I do that for college professors in the College of Natural Sciences. And I actually head up the evaluations program. I forgot to say that the last time. But I actually head up the evaluations program, and I'm innovating in that space at UT. Because it's one thing to say, you need to work on doing this, but it's another thing. So I've taken evaluations and shifted them to something we call a consultation now, where there's an evaluation, but then also specific help for faculty members to actually improve upon their teaching so that they build this story, a comprehensive narrative of what they do in the classroom, right? So with this Texas Mindset Initiative, this is the team that I work with. We focus on closing opportunity gaps by creating environments that are both accessible, okay, and then also inclusive for all students. So we really focus on coaching faculty, not students, to help students belong in their courses, right? What does it mean to belong somewhere or to have a sense of belonging? Anybody know? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Yeah, you do. Go ahead, girl. You don't? Okay. All right. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, maybe just feel comfortable at home somewhere.
Yeah, to feel comfortable and at home, right? So when you go to college, imagine, where do you think you want to go to college? Name somewhere you might want to go.
I'm probably going to go to Arkansas.
Arkansas. All right. How big is that school?
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big. What does that mean?
20,000.
Okay. All right. Good number. So you're sitting in your introductory freshman psychology class because you're probably going to major in psychology since you want to help people, or sociology. Yeah. And there are like 250 people in that class and one professor. How can one professor make 250 students feel at home? I coach professors on how to do that, right? And here's the thing. We know a lot about how the school structure itself can actually help students feel like they belong and sense of purpose and things like that. But we don't know a lot about how faculty can contribute to that. So this Texas Mindset Initiative is this research practice partnership model where we literally have some research-based practices that we coach professors on how to do, right? And so we combine with faculty, those are the people we work with. There's also a team of behavioral scientists, and so the head behavioral scientist is this David Yeager guy in psychology. The pedagogy experts are the people that you see on this side, so Brandon, Keeley, and Kristen, and myself, right? And so we combine to actually do transformative practices. Yes?
Is he your PI or?
Yes, so,
Publishing?
yes, so David Yeager is the principal investigator. That means he's kind of like the person who says, okay, I'm going to kind of be in charge of this whole study, all right? And then Kristen Patterson on this side is a co-PI, and Brandon Keeley and I are and we round out the pedagogical expert side of the house. Okay? Yeah. And so literally, what we do know is that there are these life transitions, like going to college, where sense of belonging kind of drops in students. And so literally, we help the professors to kind of reinstill that in you, okay? Now, so basically, instead of thinking about how to intervene on the student side, we take this common thing that happens. Professors will say, sorry, it's hard for you. Maybe you're just not a math person. We work on this professor to say, hey, you might not want to say that to students, but here are some things you can say instead, right? And I will tell you, it sounds very easy, doesn't it? Does it sound easy to do that? It is hard. Anybody ever say you can't teach an old dog new tricks? You ever heard of that? Okay, well, I specialize in teaching old dogs new tricks, and I'm not calling faculty dogs, right? I'm just saying I specialize in teaching people who are very ingrained and entrenched in the methods that they use, and teach them new and innovative ways to achieve some different goals. Okay? Yes? Can
you tell us some of the methods that you use?
Oh my gosh, yes. So a couple things. We work on building community, okay? And that is building community amongst the students in the classroom. How many of you all have had a conversation with everybody in this room? No? See, I have a large freshman biology 2 lecture that I'll start teaching classes in tomorrow, right? And by the end of the semester, every student in that class, which is about 100 students in my section, will have had at least one interaction with everybody else in the class. Okay? All right? We also teach professors how to give feedback. That's important, right? So if you need some constructive criticism, if you want to praise a student, we teach them how to do that. So a lot of different things, basically talking about how you interact and then how you set up the classroom environment so that it is conducive to promoting growth mindset, belonging, and inclusivity. Okay? All right. So I have about 30 seconds left.
Go 5 more minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, and I want you to think about something. What problems do you want to solve? Because as you saw, I kind of had 3 phases of my career trajectory that I presented to you. I talked about my research time. I talked about my education and outreach work, and then I talked about my policy and education research side, okay? So literally, my why, what's my why? I want to work on initiatives and problems, and initiatives and programs that solve the problem of making education at higher levels and therefore lucrative career opportunities in STEM accessible to everyone, right? Because I will tell you this, at the end of the day, all right, STEM environments don't have a lot of diversity. I'm meaning people from different backgrounds, right? And there are some very interesting reasons as to why that happens. But I really want to change that because guess what? Once I got to graduate school, there weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me. At UT, I teach in the program called the Texas Interdisciplinary Plan Scholars Program. So all of the students in my classes are actually from this one scholarship learning community. In 20 years of this program being in existence, they have never had a black professor. I'm the first one. Why is that, right? And so literally my why is to make STEM careers accessible to everyone. And I'll give you a hint. It's not about people from different backgrounds being able to do the work. It's literally about the environment that they're placed in and how that environment actually places barriers, right? Okay, any questions? Anything that you want to know? Yes, ma'am.
So do you have two separate jobs, or is this an extra stipend thing?
So my main role at UT is staff, and then I teach as a part, well, on the side, right? To literally establish a rapport with faculty and maintain my street cred with the 794 people that I serve, right? Sometimes you kind of have to immerse yourself in the culture in order for, like, you know how FBI informants work? You all know how that works? Literally plant somebody in a group. I'm kind of like an informant, but not like for crime. Yeah, I stay in the classroom so that I stay immersed in the environment that I'm going to talk about people with. Yeah, talk to people about. Yes. How do I get the training for?
How do you get into that job?
Oh, wow. Okay, so interesting story, and this is why your what needs to align with your why, all right? About 2 years ago, I have a husband, okay? And he is also a faculty member at the University of Texas. He's a full professor of biomedical engineering, so he's in the biomedical engineering department. He said, we were in Boston, he was at Boston University, I was at LaSalle University. By the way, I was a department chair, so I was the chair of biology and health science in the general education science core at LaSalle. He's like, babe, I got something to talk to you about. I was like, what? I got a call today. I was like, okay. I was like, from where? He's like, from University of Texas, they want me to come do a seminar. And I'm like, oh, you should go, okay? So he goes and does a seminar, and he comes back. How'd it go? It went very well. 2 days later, he gets a phone call. Babe, I got a call today. Okay, what? University of Texas wants to recruit me to be a part of their biomedical engineering faculty. My research fills a hole or an area of expertise that they don't have in their faculty. What do you think? So now I'm on the trajectory to hire college leadership, and I make this decision with my husband to move all the way from Boston to Texas. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing as a job. Turns out we're moving in the middle of the pandemic, and I say, whoa. And the University of Texas says, well, you know what? To get your husband, my husband says to the University of Texas, well, my wife has all these areas of expertise. He sent them my resume and my CV to the dean of the College of Natural Science at the time. His name was Paul Goldbart. And he said, oh, we'll make a role for her, right? And so see, my what has changed, but I'm still in the same why, right? Even through life transition. So that is literally how I got here. That's how I got to UT. I never envisioned that I'd be in a role like this, but here I am, doing the darn thing, right? And I will continue to slay all day, just like I know you will. Yes, Beyonce, right? Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Did you get any conclusive results from your study about the
Yeah, so literally in heart failure, what estrogen does is it actually limits the amount of enlargement of the heart muscle, right? So that the heart failure doesn't get as exacerbated as it would without estrogen. That doesn't mean everybody go tell your mama or your grandmama or whoever else to take estrogen. Those are results in animal models, and there's some complications in humans that we have to take into account. So any type of therapies like hormone replacement, estrogen, has to be done in consultation with a physician. But the idea is that you want to take, if you replace hormones after menopause, which is kind of like the loss of circulating estrogen in women, you want to take it for the lowest dose possible and the shortest amount of time. Yeah. Okay. That's general guidance, but talk to your doctors about that. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Well, I don't know, right? Because really, when you get into roles like this, you think about, okay, do I leave? Do I stay? Like, do I go? It's right. But I will say this: any job, okay, or any career trajectory where I have the opportunity to interpret scientific data, to actually participate and generate scientific studies, whether it be for things like student interactions or even things back at the bench, right? And I get a chance to communicate those things, manage teams. I'm all set to do all those things, right? And so literally, at this point, I'm interested in career growth, and whether that be at UT or outside of UT. But my next step, right, would be a higher management position in higher ed. Yep. All right. Well, y'all be good. Listen, let me tell you something. You're going to have a lot of people that you speak to in the next couple days or in the next hours of this day. But I want to leave you with this. Make sure that as you plan your life, think about your why. Let that be the center of everything you do, and all things will fall into place. All right? So y'all go continue to be great.
Thank you.